Hey, welcome back to the stash. Ladies and gentlemen, it is that time of the month again. No, it's not Skip Westcott, it's the latest release of Ultimate Spider-Man, the current best Spidey series that we've had in a very long time. Today we've got a few things to cover because this issue is continuing the many massive build-ups within Hickman's world, but is it perhaps too much? Is there some concern starting to raise within this title? I'm a little conflicted yet still super excited to dive into this one, so join us today as we go over Ultimate Spider-Man issue 8, the beginning of the Sinister Six. But before we get into that, I just want to take a quick second to let you all know that we are trying to reach 3,500 subscribers before the end of September. I know it's a huge ask, but with your help, I know we can do it. So if you're new around here and you like Spidey or just comic content in general, feel free to stick around and maybe hit that subscribe button. But anyway, with all that being said, let's go straight back into the video. So in case you've missed the previous uploads, lucky for you there is a playlist, I'll go over a quick recap. 20 years ago, the Maker prevented a radioactive spider from biting a young Peter Parker. He likewise prevented the creation of any other superheroes and formed the secret council to rule the world from the shadows. But 7 months ago, Tony Stark sent Peter that same radioactive spider along with a picotech suit and warnings of the Maker's Council, a shadow organization that rules the world. Since then, Peter has used his incredible powers granted by the spider's bite to fight crime alongside the Green Goblin, aka Harry Osborn, the co-CEO of OSCORP. When Peter and Harry were brutally defeated by Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin of Manhattan, Peter's entire family learned of his secret identity. But right now, Peter has a more pressing problem. Tony Stark has returned. Now our story begins at the lovely home of Peter and Mary Jane Watson Parker. I gotta say, it's very nice to see Parker at the end of her last name again, it feels like the 90s. It's a bittersweet day within the month of August for the pair though, especially for Peter in this scene because it's another year and another birthday party for his two children, Richard and May Parker. Time seems to fly, and it leaves Peter just zoning out completely in his own little world thinking back. MJ gathers his attention and they make their way or else soon they'll be late for the celebration. As Peter is about to leave and follow MJ's lead, something peculiar happens. His picotech suit begins talking to him, without even being worn. Peter's rightfully caught off guard by this, and the suit assures him he can do all kinds of things, which is totally not creepy. Pete puts it back and tells the suit they're gonna have to have a long talk about this later and leaves. We cut back to 3 weeks ago where the last issue ended things, and we get some pretty interesting dialogue within this scene. Peter asks Tony why his suit is so much more different than his and Harry's, and Tony explains it was the last thing his father was able to make, and in short, the picotech suit is revolutionary. It's even way beyond anything Tony himself knows how to make. He continues though, during the time he was putting together the packages to send out to the future heroes of their world, he decided that the suit should go to someone who might need it the most. Something special for someone special. Peter questions what makes him so worthy, and Tony explains that there was a list, and on that list, Spider-Man was at the very top. After Harry shows a concern of credibility, Tony assures him he's telling the truth. This, in a way, sparks a little bit of tension between the two. He continues by asking who he's meant to be in that stolen armor. In a power play, Iron Lad disarms Harry's suit and retracts the helmet, revealing his face. Tensions slowly rise once again when Tony claims he stole his birthright. Harry replies with, well actually I paid for it, and they continue their back and forth. Before the scene ends, Harry asks where he was on that list. Tony, confused at first, reveals that in fact, he wasn't actually on the list at all. Back to the present now, we see Peter, Ben and Jonah going to pick up the cake for the birthdays. This is where it's revealed that next month, or next issue I should say, is going to be when the paper will finally be opened for business. Ben and Jonah make it very well known though that they want Peter to be working with them when it happens. After some convincing, Peter tells him that he'll talk it over with MJ later on. Now, I'm so glad to see that the paper will finally be making more progress within the next issue because I've been dying to see it actually in action. It's been so long since they've set it up beforehand, and it's taken a bit too long in my opinion, so I'm glad that they're finally going to get the ball rolling. It's finally time for the big party. It's funny how in this world Arcade literally owns an arcade. We get this really sweet moment between Richard and Jonah. Jonah within this world seems very lonely in comparison to his 616 counterpart. In the original world, he's always had some form of a family, be it his son or his relationships over the years, whereas here it's a bit different. From what we know, he doesn't actually have a Joanne nor Marla, and he sort of acts like that family relative who you can tell wants to make an effort to be a bit more closer with the rest, and so I really do enjoy that aspect of Jonah within this series. It makes him feel much more real as a character, considering he usually misses that aspect of his nature nowadays, because he's just been boiled down to this cartoonified version of himself. Within this moment, it becomes a light for Richard in a sense because he allows him to know that he's not the only one who's been through this difficult journey through school, and the pair are actually way more similar than Richard would even guess. Now I really love this next part. So Jonah gifts him his book. Turns out he made it between stories at the Bugle, but no one would publish it, so he did it himself. He didn't care if it lost him money because it was out to the world. It was his, and now it's Richard's. It's cake time and everyone gathers around to wish May and Richard a very happy birthday. For what it was, I really enjoyed this scene of the book. I thought it was a great little moment to sort of see, more of the personal life of Peter Parker, because it's missing so badly within ASM, and when they do finally get to that within that book, they mess it up severely. So to have a really nice moment between all the characters was very well appreciated. So our story ends at Fist Tower, where we see the Kingpin gather his Sinister Six. The first member is Martin Lee, aka Mr. Negative. By day he runs the Feast Foundation, but by night he runs a gang called the Demons, who primarily operate within Queens. He's been advised to Wilson as his most dependable lieutenant. On the other hand, there's Walter Hardy, considered the greatest top floor thief in the world. The Black Cat seemingly ended his career after having never been caught. Post-retirement, he used his wealth to control and own territory within the Bronx. Hardy also started a family, unfortunately though his wife passed away a while ago, leaving behind a daughter. The third member is Kraven the Hunter. He's a billionaire oligarch excommunicated from Russia during the Rasputin Purge. He is a hunter born of a long line of hunters, possibly the most dangerous member of this Sinister Six. In this world, Mysterio, who's the next member, owns Brooklyn. Beyond that, there's no more information available. This did make me laugh though. Now, people of New York usually believe there's only 5 boroughs, but in reality there's 6. The underworld is a major yet hidden one, and that belongs to the Mole Man, the second last member of the Sinister Six. Now, last but definitely not least is the Kingpin, their leader. With the team complete and fully set of Mr. Negative, the Black Cat, Mysterio, Kraven the Hunter, Mole Man, and the Kingpin, they finally begin their mission. Now, when it comes to this issue of Ultimate Spider-Man, I honestly have a lot of mixed feelings. I'm becoming a little bit worried that Hickman might be trying to set up too much to the point where it's feeling like all we're getting is no payoff, but instead more and more things that we'll eventually see. The first story arc wasn't even a proper conclusion. If anything, it was more set up for this part, which is just even more setup. The reason it worked for the first 6 issues was because it was a fresh new world, but now we've passed that stage, it's time to finally get the ball really rolling. Listen, I completely understand how when you want to really tell a cohesive and well thought out plot, you must have time to establish new concepts and story elements. However, here, it's starting to feel like we're spending every 4 issues or so slowly building up to a comic with an actual form of development. It worked before because, like I said, it was new and it felt like there was some sense of balance. But now, a couple months later, the pacing is seriously starting to drag a bit. I'd allow this issue to get more off the hook if things really pick up in the next month or so. However, if it doesn't, then there's a serious concern for me at least within this series. To give a proper example of how to balance out a well thought out long story arc filled with depth and character building, I like to harken back to the classic Ultimate Spider-Man, specifically the way they handled the origin story. In many ways, the new USM took a lot of inspiration when it came to their story layouts, especially the length it took to establish Peter as Spider-Man. Bendis took the origin story that was originally not even a full comic length and made it into a 5-part story arc. I personally count issue 6 as well because it's the first time we completely see him as Spidey, but that's just me. During these comics, Bendis took a lot of time to really build up each and every one of the cast of characters he was using, ranging from Aunt May to Ben to everyone in his high school. He kept it simple as well as only really having 2 plots at the forefront, the main being Pete's origin and the secondary one being Norman's transformation into the Green Goblin. It didn't feel overly crammed and allowed for more of a condensed story with actual payoffs once they fully became who they were meant to be. Even post that story arc, Bendis continued a great blend of world building as well as rewarding the reader. Stuff felt like it was happening all the time. Here though, I'm a tad worried that things within this title are starting to get a little bit cluttered. We've got the picotech suit becoming increasingly more weirder, Harry's slow descent to becoming the proper Green Goblin, the entire Sinister Six thing, the paper, and the Maker's plot. I personally feel like it would be better for the book if it really honed in on a couple of these plots, just to allow for more of a natural flow within all the issues. Even with the technical payoffs within this issue, it still wasn't anything satisfying for me. We had the big cliffhanger last time with Iron Lad appearing out of nowhere, and here he's reduced to a short flashback. Don't get me wrong, I love this series, but it doesn't mean I can ignore things that I sort of find concerning in a way. But now onto the things I do like, which is still a lot. For all the build up we do have within this series and even in this issue, I still find them really fun and interesting moments, which is what it's got to be if you want to take this route with your story. For all the concerns I may have after this release with the pacing, I do think that they're doing an amazing job when it comes to Harry's journey into becoming the version we're all familiar with. I don't want another situation like Marvel's Spider-Man 2 where it's just like, boom, all of a sudden symbiotes everywhere. That moment when Tony destroyed his ego was so perfectly written, and I like that him and Pete are still going to team up for a little while longer before what I'm guessing is going to eventually turn into that classic rivalry. I love seeing more of the Parker family. That's one theme in this book that I think should be right at the forefront. It was always strong in the 80s and 90s when he was actually still Spider-Man, and back then he was only married, but here he's got kids, which should only enforce that element of the book even more. It's nice to see Richard get some well-deserved spotlight, and I really enjoyed the bond him and Jameson are forming. For such a bold and brave lineup, I gotta say I'm really excited to see this Sinister Six in action. Having the OG Black Cat actually get the shine in ways his 616 counterpart never did is something I was not expecting. However, I'm not against it either. The banter between them seems to be really fun too, and Mysterio is constantly being the highlight within the comics. Is also just great to see that he's kept up that tradition. Mole Man was a really unexpected choice, however I think Hickman can honestly make it work. I feel like a massive part of it has to do with his redesign. Something about it makes him look a tad more serious than he normally does. The artwork is once again outstanding. I really can't get enough of it. We always knew Marco was one of the best modern Marvel artists, and I'm so glad he's continuing his winning streak within this title. Overall, when it comes to Ultimate Spider-Man issue 8, I mostly enjoyed it. By itself, it's another great comic by the duo of Hickman and Kakito, but as a part of the larger scale of their series, I can't help but notice some concerning signs that they may be taking on a bit too much all at once. Some people have always raised issue with the pacing of the story, and I always dismiss those concerns because during the first arc it simply worked, and I believe that it still does. But from now on, I think we really need to start picking up the pace. It's not bad by any means, however for me it's just definitely not their best. But that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, because here, any support means so much. I'd love to hear what you thought of this issue down below in the comment section. Do you mind the pacing, or is this starting to concern you as well? Be sure to tune in next time, same web time, same web channel. Thank you guys again for watching, and see you in the next one.